All right, all praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, Elohim of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want to say peace to you in the name of His Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. We know it's Jesus the Christ. It's always a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to bring a message contained in His Word, and ever do I count it the right thing to do so. With that being said, I want to deal with go right into today's message, and that is answering the question: did angels sleep with women and produce offspring? Oftentimes, they would be referred to as Nephilim. This is a common doctrine, and I would say no. And I'm gonna go over the reasons why I say no. That's not the case. But I'll start in Genesis 6 because this is where this doctrine comes from. There's so much in the book of Genesis that um, if you don't have an understanding, even though it is the beginning of the book, you need understanding of the book in entirety, and overall general understanding to understand the things that are going on in the book of Genesis. So let's pick it up in Genesis 6 and verse 1. Genesis 6 and 1 reads as follows: And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Okay, so right there, because it says the sons of God, it is believed that this is referring to angels. And why do people say that? Well, because angels are referred to as the sons of God. So on the surface, it must be talking about angels, right? And then it's this whole notion of, well, that's where you get this superior race, and that's why he brought the flood. The only problem with that is the Bible doesn't say that. Secondly, so he tells you actually why he brought the flood. It wasn't because you had this superior race, or this of angels that were made of angels and women. Let's pick it up in the book of Job real quick, because angels are referred to as the sons of God. That is true. So let's look at that real quick. Let's go to the book of Job. In the book of Job, we'll pick it up at chapter 2. And in chapter 2, it reads, and again, in verse 1, again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present themselves before the Lord. So that's referring to the angels. Those weren't men, okay? But now let's go back, and just if you can remember some of the things that I've touched upon in previous lessons. In Genesis, I talked about the two seeds, right? So now let's go back and look and see who, because we want to understand who else is referred to as the Son of God. You have to qualify things in the Bible. Sons of God or Son of God is one of those terms you have to qualify. Just like you have to qualify heaven. Are you talking about the heaven of heavens, which is also referred to as the third heaven? Or are you talking about the earth, which is also referred to as heaven? Or where the sun and the moon and stars and the birds fly, that is also heaven. Are you talking what? So when you say the word hell, are you talking about the grave? Or are you talking about hell, the lake of fire? When you say spirit, are you talking about Elohim? He's a spirit. Are you talking about the breath of life? That's a spirit. Are you talking about your thoughts? That's the spirit. Those are spirits, rather. Are you talking about the word? That is spirit. So like you have to qualify what you're talking about in the Bible. So just because you see the term sons of God, it does not mean that it is referring to angels. But it can be. But in this case, I don't believe it is. But now, and I'm gonna go on and further to show you why. And we'll backtrack a little bit. Let's go to Genesis, the 4th chapter. Genesis, the 4th chapter, because in Genesis, the 4th chapter, we see the most significant narrative. It begins with, it obviously is Cain and Abel, and how Cain murdered Abel. And what that was, and what that shows us, is that there are two seeds. In other words, there are two. And you can be either of the Most High, or you can be of that wicked one, as Jesus said in John when he told those Jews, "You are of your father, the devil." Spiritually speaking, you're following one or the other. And so when Cain killed Abel, that cut off the righteous seed. But that righteous seed was reestablished. I touched upon this some time ago. That righteous seed was reestablished with Seth. So in Genesis 4 and 26, it reads, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Notice what it says later after this, because this is significant. Then began man to call upon the name of the Lord. Okay, and the name of the Lord they called on was Yahuwah. Now, why is that significant? Because that is showing you that the righteous seed or lineage was reestablished. And also in verse 25, if we go back a little further, it says, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. For God said, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. Now, you still have Cain. So why this one that is called Seth is appointed? Why is that? Because this is referring to what type of seed. Okay, let's go a little further with this. So now when you look in Genesis, the 5th chapter, in verse 1, you see these descendants. Notice who it ends with, or rather who is mentioned. It says in Genesis 5:1, this is the book of the generations of Adam, and the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. That's another thing. He made man in his image and in his likeness. He didn't make angels in that way. Angels didn't come and just lay with men. That is not what happened. But let's go down a little further. In verse 6, it says, and Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. And Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years and begat sons and daughters. Okay, and all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. So now let's go further and see a little bit more about this righteous lineage. Let's pick it up at Luke, the 3rd chapter. In Luke chapter 3, we see the lineage, and it's going to take us right back to this time we just read about in the Bereshith in Genesis, and I want us to pay attention to what they're called. This is Genesis, the 3rd chapter, and we'll pick it up. See, not Genesis. This is Luke, the 3rd chapter, and in starting at verse 23, it's talking about the genealogy of Yehoshua or Jesus. It says, and Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being as he was supposed the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli, and it goes all the way back. Now notice what it says here in verse 38, which is so because it says which was the son of. It keeps going on and on and on. If you read this, in verse 38, it says which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth. Now those two I just read about in Genesis, but then it goes back to Adam, and notice what it calls him, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. See, Adam was the son of God. Right? So now what makes you a son of God? Because we know angels, I read in Job, when you read in Job 2, and it's talking about the sons of God appear before the Lord, that's talking about angels. Okay. But now when you read further, who we see that Adam was a son of God. Like I said, you have to qualify that. So when you're reading that in Genesis, the sons of God, that's that righteous lineage. Again, so what makes you a son of God? Let's read that. Let's go to the gospel according to John. John chapter 1 and verse. We're just reading verse 12. It says, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the what? The sons of God. Even to them that believe on his name. Because he said, ye are God's children of the Most High God. We are his children. So that's what that's referring to. Let's stay with this. This is 1 John. 1 John. And we'll pick it up at 1 John, the 3rd chapter. 1 John 3 and verse 1, because he tells us this a number of times. 1 John 3 and 1 says, behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the what? The sons of God. Therefore, the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. That's why you a righteous individual. You get rejected because the world has rejected him. But you are following him. Hopefully this is making sense unto you. You can't see, you have to qualify things, and you have to be able to read where you had this particular race of Nephilim or giants that were made by angels. The Bible does not say that. Genesis, I don't believe it does. Genesis 4, and let's pick it up at verse 6, because he says, he talks about being a son of God here. It says, because it talks about how to be heirs, right? It says, I'll pick it up in verse 4. It says, but when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his son. So the Father sent his son, made of a woman, made under the law. Now we know he was the son of Elohim, right? He was the son of God, as you read in the New Testament. But then he told you when he told you how to pray, he said, pray our Father. Wait, what? That makes us sons too. And he tells you after he was resurrected, he told Mary, go tell my brethren. Wait, what? I mean, we're sons. He says, but when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law. Meaning you needed redemption from the penalty of the law. You needed to be saved from the eternal damnation or the punishment that came from breaking Torah, breaking the law. It said to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons, God has sent forth the spirit of his son into your hearts, crying, what? Abba, Father. See, so when you see sons of God, you need to understand what sons of God is talking about. And again, I do not believe that it was talking about angels dealing with man. This is what I believe here. 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter. Because this is this is a common, and this is something that is argued quite a bit, But now this is 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter, and verse 14. This is what I think this is an issue of. The first issue of this, when I say this, I'm talking about of being of the righteous dealing with the unrighteous. This is 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 14. He says, be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath a righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness? Let's go back to Genesis and read it again. Genesis, the 6th chapter. So with that information, that we are called the sons of God as well, right? Let's go a little further, because what about the giants? We'll get there. But Genesis, the 6th chapter, and verse 2, it says, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fed, and took them wives of all which they chose. I believe this is that righteous seed intermingling with that unrighteous seed of Cain. And then he goes on to say, and the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And he cut man's lifespan. But now it says in verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So some would say, well, see, it had to be the angels because there were giants, or Nephilim as they are called. Well, just because you have Nephilim does not mean that they were of angels. Let's see another Nephilim. Let's go to Numbers, the 13th chapter. And some will say, well, you can't say, this is the contextual issue that what I'm about to say here. But if we're going to keep reading, and we're going to see something that Christ said that you should kind of take this doctrine and kind of reconsider it. This is Numbers 13 and verse 33. Because when they sent spies to spy out the land, some brought a negative report. And notice what they said. They said in verse 32, and they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants. Now it says the sons of Anak, or Anakim, right? So which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So Goliath was a giant. He was a Philistine. He was a giant. We have the NBA, a league of giants. You can go to parts of Sudan where they have some of the tallest people in the world. Does that mean that they are from angels and women? No. Well, what about men of renown? Let's go to Numbers, the 16th chapter. In Numbers, the 16th chapter, right after you had the man that was killed for violating the Sabbath, then you had the commandment of the tzitzit, or the fringes on garments. Right after that, what did you have? You had the rebellion of Korah in the 16th chapter. Seems like it's all running together. That's a whole nother lesson. But in 16:1, it says, now Korah, the son of Yishar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the son of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men. Notice what it says here in verse 2. And they rose up before Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. It describes them the same way. So now, this is, for me, what really convinces me that that's not the case. That angel slept with me. I know that's an enticing doctrine. But I look at what the Mashiach said in his discourse with the Sadducees. Now, the Sadducees, this is Matthew 22. Matthew 22. The Sadducees argued incorrectly that there was no resurrection. And just a side note, there's a resurrection. How do you know there's a resurrection? Because he's the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's the Elohim of the living, not the dead. Letting you know, if he's saying, that alone shows you, if he's saying that and those men are dead, that could only mean that they're going to be resurrected. And we know that the covenant was established with Abraham, confirmed through his sons, his son and his grandson. Therefore, we know that they will be resurrected. See, living. But nevertheless, again, another lesson. But nevertheless, it says they came, they didn't believe in the resurrection. I'm going to pick it up in Matthew 22 and 23. It says, the same day came to him the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection, and asked him, saying, Master, Moses said, if a man die, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. I know this sounds, may sound odd to some, but this was the practice at that time. It's still practiced in some parts of the world. This is what they call the liberate law, or the duty of brothers. If a brother died having no seed, then his surviving brother would marry his brother's widow and raise up seed in his brother's name, so his deceased brother's name would not be blotted out in Israel. And that son actually would belong, firstborn son would actually belong to the deceased brother, and he would receive an inheritance, and he would carry on the name of the father or the brother that was deceased, rather. So it says, so they're going to give a scenario, right? They think they're smart, I guess. It says, now there were with us 7 brethren, and the first, when he had married a wife, deceased, and having no issue, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third unto the 7th. And last of all, the women died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. So now she said she had 7 husbands, from one brother to the next. And then it says, so whose husband would she be in the resurrection when you are eternal? Notice what it says. It said, Jesus answered and said unto them, ye do err, not knowing the scriptures nor the power of Elohim, or the power of God. He said, for in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage. And then he says something that's key for me. He says, but are as the angels of God in heaven. Saying they are like the angels of God in heaven mean they don't marry. So if you don't marry, you wouldn't do the thing which consummates a marriage. See, when he called us the son, think about when he called us the sons of God over and over and over again. Are we the sons of God because God, that he laid with a woman, he made a woman to lay with? Is that what happened? No, he made us and we reproduce in that fashion, and he's going to give us a change. He is reproducing, but it is not in the same manner as a fleshly terrestrial being would. He is celestial. The angels are the same way. So that's why he says, but are as the angels of God in heaven, saying he's clearly, for me, he's clearly saying that they don't do that. So that's why I believe people need to understand what the Bible is saying. Look at this thing a little further and understand that he's not, that angels are not, didn't sleep with men, and that wasn't even necessary. And why did the flood come about? The flood, let's go back to Genesis 6. Because he tells you, because I believe the intermingling, that's why he says, be not unequally yoked with unbelievers. When you are unequally yoked, what happens is it breeds sin. That's why I always counsel believers. They worried about considering marrying somebody that's not a believer. I'm not talking about somebody that's in a marriage and the person is they already married. That could be a different situation. But you're going to marry somebody. You're going to go into a situation and a person is not a believer. They hate your faith. They've shown. I'm talking about examples that I'm talking about that I've witnessed. They hate your faith. And you want to marry that person anyway. Well, you're setting up a situation that is more than likely going to breed sin. Why? Because you're trying to walk a righteous path, and they are your lives. When you get married, you intermingle. You intermingle your lives. So now she's pulling you, or he's pulling you one way, and you going in the opposite direction. So and then you're gonna have kids. Then this is problematic. So nevertheless, why did he bring forth the flood? It says in verse 5 of Genesis 6, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That's why he brought the flood. And that's a constant thing that you see, that a problem with being unequally yoked. Another example of this is Jehoshaphat and Ahab. That's Jehoshaphat had no business, should not have went into consort, if you will, with Ahab to take Ramoth Gilead. Right? Or if you see another example, then that's in general, particularly in marriage, you see it was Solomon. Solomon took 1,000 wives, and those wives were not righteous women. And when he got old, he got weak, and he started building these edifices to these false deities that these wives dealt with. That's a prime example. That's why, or another example, why he tells you in Deuteronomy the 7th chapter, don't marry people from these nations and the other people that you were going into the land. Why? Because they'll turn you from serving me. See, that's what I believe. This is the first example of that. And that's why sin became rampant. And it is true that they had men that were giants and men of renown, but that don't mean that they slept with angels, because you have to qualify sons of God. It could mean that there were just giants in that land, that there were men of renown. You had that just like you had that later. Just like you have giants and men of renown even until this day. If I say Elon Musk, that's a man of renown. If I say Donald Trump, that's a man of renown. If I say Vladimir Putin, everybody knows who I'm talking about. Or if I say Shaquille O'Neal, that's a giant. You see what I'm saying? So he said, and it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for repented me that I have made them. Then it talks about how Noah found grace, and he told Noah to build an ark, and it was because of sin running rampant. We can't read it. He said, well, it was because he made this race, this race of men that came from angels. It doesn't say that. It actually does not say that. And if you're saying that, you're actually putting that in. That's a leak. You're saying something that's not written. But I can read when he said, no, the resurrected be like the angels in heaven, not married, not given in marriage, but like the angels in heaven. I can read that. I can read that sons of God can refer to man. So with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you, we're at the Household of Faith, meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel. We also meet every Sabbath in Stafford, Virginia. Our Stafford, Virginia congregation meets at the Red Roof Inn at 153 Garrisonville Road in Stafford, Virginia at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I also want to say this: we are not affiliated with any other congregation at all. Okay, so, and the reason I'm saying that is because recently I've had two people mention that to me and ask that question or just assume that we are not affiliated with any other congregations. We have the Household of Faith in Gary, and we have the Household of Faith in Stafford, Virginia, and those are the congregations that we have. And so with that, brothers and sisters, so it's my prayer that you were edified.